What's up guys, Jam here. Today we'll be covering the best day of Rem's life side story. I know a lot of you Rem fans have been waiting for this. This side story will be safe for anime onlys. With that being said, let's get right into the side story. We open with a flustered Rem rushing to finish her chores, but she was distracted from her work. Rem was trying to understand why her heart was pounding. She was interrupted by a certain boy with short black hair. "Oh, you're almost done with your chores, Rem." Rem smiles and bows her head in front of the boy. "Yes, would you like to have some tea together, Subaru?" Rem finally understood the reasoning behind her flustered state. It was because she couldn't get Subaru out of her mind. Whether she was asleep or awake, she would be thinking about him. Isn't that far too much? Even she questioned how abnormal her love was. The only other person she knew who felt the same way as her was her older sister Rom. Her love for Roswell rivaled her own for Subaru. While she was lost in thought, she's brought back to reality by Subaru. "Rem? Yes, is something wrong, Subaru?" "No, but aren't you a little too close? Seems it would be inconvenient for drinking tea." Really? Rem doesn't find it inconvenient at all. They were close enough that they could feel each other's breath. The two were sitting in the living room of the Roswell mansion. While the two had maintained some distance at the start, without Subaru noticing, Rem inched closer and closer. "Subaru, would you like some more snacks?" "There's more? You did a great job making these. Then I shall go prepare. If Subaru disappears while I'm preparing, then I'll be sad. I wouldn't do something that mean. How about we promise on it? A promise." The two smile and make a pinky promise with one another. Rem recalls how a week ago, Subaru had saved her and Rom from the mobbies. She was captivated by the future he described in their promise. But recently, she has become less satisfied. She wanted more precious promises about the future. Rem was about to step out of the room when she stopped. Subaru smiled and pointed at his hair. "We made a promise about trimming my hair before. I think it's time I need your help, right?" Subaru did not know how much those words made Rem's heart beat like crazy. We cut to Rem, who is about to cut Subaru's hair. She recalls how this was the first promise that she made with Subaru. While Rem was lost in thought, she snaps out of it at the sound of Subaru's voice. "It's not that I forgot. It's because I've been running around lately that I haven't had the chance. Even if I mentioned it, once I remember there's a guy who can't read the mood, I could only postpone it. It's not like Subaru to have worries at all. It would be better if you were more like your usual self, where you don't think before you speak, cause a mess, then run around trying to fix it." Why do I feel nostalgic about this feeling of pain in my heart from Rem's harsh words? Rem pushes her chest on the back of the barber chair. She then leaned forward slightly to look at Subaru and laughed harder. Subaru smiles back and thinks to himself, "Although this kind of Rem is insanely cute, I can't say it out loud." Rem ties a towel around Subaru's neck and they were ready to begin the haircut. After changing hairstyles, it'll give the impression of a different person. It's quite common in anime and manga. If it's done indoors, it'll be difficult to clean up. If it's outside, then we just need to sweep the ground and wash your head. How short should I cut it? Rem sighs as she notices a small portion of Subaru's hair that was messy, but once it's trimmed, it'll be perfect. Rem, just cut it to the length where it looks the coolest. Subaru is always at his coolest. The purpose of my haircut was denied. It was over before it began. This responsibility is quite heavy. Rem, it's fine if you don't think about it too much. Rem moisturizes Subaru's hair and then pulls out a pair of scissors. But her hand stopped. Her right hand was trembling like there was no tomorrow. "Subaru, this is bad. My hand won't stop trembling." Subaru is shocked at how bad the trembling is and is having second thoughts. Rem is responsible for Sister and Roswell's haircuts, but Subaru's is the first time. There is no way a barber would be able to make a living if he said such a thing. Subaru sighs and tells Rem it's okay if the haircut doesn't come out that good, because it'll grow back in a week. But, because of Rem, Subaru might become bald for a week. If I'm going to become bald, then it's probably better to stop, right? Does Subaru have any unease about giving this task to Rem? Rem goes quiet as she recalls how Subaru saw her demon side in the Mobby's forest. She had tried killing him twice, but if you consider Subaru using himself as bait, then it was 3 times. Twice inside the forest, Subaru saw Rem's nature. Even before that, Rem also. She even questioned whether or not to kill Subaru when he first arrived at the mansion. She had carried this guilt for a long time. Why was he able to sit in front of her so carelessly? Rem. Subaru was calling her name, which left Rem speechless. She was scared of rejection. She didn't want to be hurt. Subaru tells Rem a fairy tale called The King with Donkey Ears. Once Subaru finished explaining the fairy tale, Rem was unable to understand the underlying lesson. Seeing Rem's puzzled expression, Subaru smiled and shouted. Rem's forehead has an Oni horn. The king was ashamed of his donkey ears, so he beheaded everyone who shared his secret. Rem, are you ashamed of being an Oni? No such thing. Rem being ashamed of her birth, something like that isn't too big of a concern. Would you find me telling your secret unforgivable? No, Rem believes that Rem coming from the Oni tribe isn't something that needs to be kept hidden. Then there's no problem. Since there's no reason Rem would hurt me because of her origins, I have no reason to be worried. But the things Rem did to Subaru. If you anger a girl, you'll get an extremely scary stare. It's something boys learn about from their fathers early on. Since it's my fault for forgetting such a thing, let's just call it even, okay? Rem was speechless. Well, how is your trembling hand doing? Rem noticed that her hand had stopped trembling. Knowing that Rem's trembling had stopped, Subaru relaxed and leaned his back on the chair. He then points at his head. Well, please give me a cool hairstyle. One that will be handsome enough that Amelia can't help but fawn over me. Subaru had no idea how deeply his words had touched Rem's heart. Rem smiles before she begins cutting. Subaru, no matter when, is always fascinating. And that sums up the best day of Rem's life side story. That was a very wholesome side story. This also provides a lot more context for the From Zero moment. Some people feel that Rem fell for Subaru way too easily and found it hard to believe that she was fine with being rejected. After reading this side story, I understand why she did. Rem obviously suffers from an inferiority complex. For not being as good enough as her sister and being the reason that Ram lost her horn. We can see how Rem also felt that she didn't deserve Subaru's kindness. You could also say this was kind of a small From Zero moment, but reverse, with Subaru being the one helping Rem. It also makes that moment hit so much harder as Rem is giving back to Subaru for everything he's done for her. One last thing this side story does is show how unhealthy Rem's love for Subaru is. She literally thinks about him in her sleep. If that isn't a simp, I don't know what is. With that being said, thank you so much for the support as always. Thank you for watching, and I hope you all have a great day.